It's great to have you joining us on Radio Free Georgia's In Tune to Nature program. I'm host Carrie Freeman, coming to you in April of 2023 from Atlanta in the Muskogee Creek Territory in the Piedmont region that's in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountain Range. And today we're going to be talking about the ecological and environmental justice aspects of the Save the Atlanta Forest movement, also known as the Stop Cop City movement, in Southeast Atlanta, comprised of many allied groups of citizens, especially Black residents, who over the last several years are working to stop the installation and building of a multi-million-dollar mega law enforcement training center in a green space and forested area, where it is unwanted by the adjacent community. To tell us about that ongoing effort is Dr. Jacqueline Echols, board president of the South River Watershed Alliance. Let me tell you about her organization. South River Watershed Alliance is the only organization protecting the health and cleanliness of the Atlanta area's South River. The South River is one of only two urban origin rivers in the state of Georgia. Its watershed comprises approximately 544 square miles of creeks and streams that drain large sections of Fulton, DeKalb, Clayton, Henry, Rockdale, Butts, and Newton counties. The river is a headwater of Georgia's largest freshwater system, the Ocmulgee and Altamaha River basins, which feed the Atlantic Ocean. The South River Watershed Alliance is a nonprofit committed to ecological restoration of the South River for the benefit of nature and people. Cleaner water requires increased awareness and advocacy, stronger protection, and management of our river as a valuable natural resource. They invite people to join them as volunteers in helping to protect a neglected river and strengthening impacted communities. Their website is southriverga.org, southriverga.org. Our guest is the board president, Dr. Jackie Echols. She's been an environmental activist in support of water and tree protection for 25 years. In 1997, Dr. Echols helped to organize and provide leadership for the community-based grassroots organization Clean Streams Task Force. As part of the 1997 Upper Chattahoochee Riverkeeper federal consent decree, the task force advocated for the total separation of Atlanta's combined sewer overflow system, affecting both the Chattahoochee and South Rivers. The task force's environmental justice-based advocacy resulted in the separation of 50%, or 9 miles, of Atlanta's 19 miles of combined sewer. As a result, 3 combined sewage discharges into the South River were eliminated. Dr. Echols also served on the Atlanta Tree Conservation Commission as a member and as chair from 2004 to 2006. In 2010, Dr. Echols assumed the role of board president of South River Watershed Alliance. Continuing the organization's environmental justice focus over the last decade, she's helped to strategically implement programs to involve the surrounding community in the restoration of the river. In 2017, Dr. Echols received Green Law's Environmental Hero Award for her years of work and dedication to protecting the environment. Welcome, Dr. Echols, Environmental Hero.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, what got you involved and dedicated to protecting the South River watershed?
That happened, as I said, over 2 decades ago. I grew up in Tuskegee, Alabama, outside, playing in the creek. And so the environment's just been a big part of my life, from the beginning. And I do believe when it comes to communities, as the environment goes, so goes the community. So if you want to improve your community, if you want to help the community, you've got to invest in the environment in which it exists. So it's just been a thing of mine, and years pass quickly.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you doing that. And we understand what a river is, obviously, but many of us may not really know what you mean when you say watershed. Can you explain why it's called the South River Watershed?
Sure. A watershed is just simply the water body, in this instance, the South River, where all of the acreage within a certain boundary that where it flows. So in that 544 acres, all of the water in that area flows to the South River via tributaries and creeks.
And many of our listeners live in Atlanta. Can you situate for us where the South River watershed is located?
Sure. The South River actually starts a stone's throw from Hartsville-Jackson Airport.
Ah, okay.
Uh, and it's actually daylights or at least comes above ground along Norman Berry Road there at East Point. And it flows actually north for about a mile.
Hmm.
And then it's piped under 7585 at the split where it goes to Macon and to the airport. And then it's on the south side of town after it is piped under the freeway. And from that point in South Atlanta, through Southeast Atlanta, through South DeKalb County, all the way to Jackson Lake, the river is above ground. And that is really rare for an urban river where development very quickly forces it into pipes. And it hasn't happened to the South River. So, from South Atlanta all the way to Jackson Lake, which is a distance of about 56 miles or so from that point, you can find the South River above ground. You may not know what it is, but it's there and it's above ground.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for that explanation. And how is the South River watershed connected to or overlapping partially the land area that is proposed to become so-called Cop City and thus is slated to undergo a multi-million-dollar construction to become a mega law enforcement training center?
Well, the South River is actually a little southeast, maybe a mile or so from the actual training center, Cop City uh, site.
Okay.
Or essentially, now it's still green space, but where it's proposed for construction. The Entrenchment Creek, on the other hand, is the major urban tributary, the urban area, the urban creek that flows to the South River, and it's the largest creek in the city of Atlanta that flows to the South River, and that's how it's actually the creek flows to the river, and therefore you get the connection. But Entrenchment Creek actually forms the border of where the Cop City development is supposed to take place.
And what was the original vision and plan that the surrounding community of majority Black residents and the South River Watershed Alliance wanted for this historic former prison farm green space that's now slated to turn into Cop City, the training facility? There was an original vision, like from years ago, about what was the best use of this area.
Right. Well, it's been green space. The city of Atlanta owned green space just in South DeKalb County. And it's been that since the 90s, when the prison farm was closed. And so over the years, the trees have grown back because, prior to that, I mean, 100 years ago, it was farmland. It was terraced farmland because the creek has been there forever. Everything comes in around the creek. And so after the old Atlanta prison farm was closed, trees grew back. City of Atlanta still owned it, and it was used for a while. And I think it maybe still is. A part of it was used for police firing range for the police, and an area where they would detonate explosives for practice, I would assume. Um, and then in 2017, the city of Atlanta added that green space, that 300 acres of green space, to their master plan, essentially, for the city from a standpoint of parks and green space and community development.
Great.
Yeah, it's in that plan. It was passed by the county, by the city in 2017, unanimously by the council. It was signed off by the mayor. The particular vision for that green space is in the city charter. You can read it there. And so that's how it was planned.
Yeah.
It was visioned as actually that green space is the largest left in the inside of 285 in the city of Atlanta.
Wow.
So once we destroy that, there there are no other parcels that come near that size.
Yeah. And from an ecological standpoint, Dr. Echols, how would the building of this law enforcement center and the ongoing use of it as a noisy training center, how do you and other experts know how it might affect the health and vitality of the watershed and the hundreds of species who live there?
Well, it'll have a detrimental effect on the environment and the community in just, a variety of ways. Just building it will create increased sediment in the trib that flows through the site and discharges into Entrenchment Creek, which is on the state 303D list, which is nothing but a state list of impaired waters.
Oh.
And the creek is impaired for sediment. That's what turns a waterway red clay. The different
Yeah.
colors. As soon as it rains, it changes colors. Well, that's sediment that washes in from different areas. And for Entrenchment Creek, it's above the limit of sediment already
Oh.
that the stream can assimilate. And the sediment chokes out the aquatic life. It chokes out the fish. It chokes out the macroinvertebrates that the fish depend on for food. And so it will totally destroy the little trib, that natural trib that flows through the site. And it will have a detrimental effect on Entrenchment Creek. As I said, it's already on the endangered list.
Yeah.
Or on the impaired list. It should be on the endangered list, actually. Yeah. And that will also impact the South River, which is also on the 303 states impaired list for sediment. Sediment is a big issue for urban streams.
Right. So it basically takes some of these tributaries and creek areas, and instead of them being alive with life, it turns them into just like dirty water areas.
Well,
that's what I'm picturing here with the sediment, if nobody can live in it, because so many of the species also who live around there would rely on that as a water source too.
Yeah, I mean it's detrimental to aquatic life, and that's a fact that's recognized by the state of Georgia.
Yeah,
and it's required in terms of protecting these waterways and the ways in which they are protected. It's enforced under the Clean Water Act. And Georgia, the Georgia Environmental Protection Division is responsible for implementing the Clean Water Act in the state.
And I also just envision just the immense noise that will come from that area as a big training center for explosives and everything. It seems so disruptive, both to the human communities that live around there, but also to the wildlife, who are trying to live and raise babies in that area too.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's amazing how much wildlife visits or lives permanently in that green space. The folks in the community around this proposed Cop City site um, value it for a number of reasons, but particularly that reason, because it's unusual to find that kind of wildlife so far up in an urban area. And it's so far up in the watershed, with Atlanta and DeKalb County sitting at the top of the watershed, since that's where the river starts. It is, amazing how much wildlife there is so close into such a large urban area, but it's because of the green space.
Yeah.
So we have this noise pollution from firing ranges and screeching cars and
Mhm.
explosives, and wildlife don't hang around
Right.
where you have that kind of noise. So it will definitely drive out the wildlife, which actually follows come up the river
Mm.
from the southeast, and they travel the river channel or the riverbank into to the area where Entrenchment Creek discharges into the river, and then they follow that creek bank up
Yeah.
Entrenchment Creek to the green space. So they are very protected right now from people, and that's what wildlife likes. And
Yeah.
so when we end up with a situation with this training facility, the wildlife will disappear. I mean, that's just, they won't come. It'll
Ugh.
disappear.
They already have so few places to exist, and then,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so disruptive.
So
If
you
you're
have,
just
go
joining
ahead.
us on Radio Free Georgia, this is In Tune to Nature, and I'm host Carrie Freeman talking about the movement to save the Atlanta forest and to stop Cop City with Dr. Jacqueline Echols, board president of the South River Watershed Alliance. Their website is southriverga.org, southriverga.org. Dr. Echols, can you speak to the proposed Cop City Training Center as an issue of racial justice and environmental justice?
Yeah. Well, of course, South Atlanta, Southeast Atlanta, South DeKalb County is one of the largest enclaves of Black people of color in this country.
Mm.
I mean, when you look at the the actual statistics, 76% of the individuals who live on the southeast side of town, South Atlanta, Southeast Atlanta, and South DeKalb County, 76% of that population is Black.
Mm-hmm.
And by virtue of the income levels, coupled with the color of people who live there, you have an environmental justice issue. And when you look at the environment and how it's been impacted over the decades, and what we see now with the whole Cop City idea is just a continuation of decades of environmental injustice on the southeast side of town and southwest DeKalb. So it just didn't happen by accident over there.
Right.
It happened because these are folks communities that have been ill-equipped to fend off these very environmentally degrading kinds of industries or developments. And so that's why we have this going on in this area. As I said, it was put in the acreage just in 2017 was put in the city's charter to be protected as park as green space. It was lauded
Right.
for its environmental benefits. It was lauded for the benefits to the community. And
Right.
just as quickly, in 2020, the city changed its mind, and without any real forethought about the impact on the community, the people who live there, they struck this deal with the Atlanta Police Foundation.
Right. Ugh. And keeping historical context in mind of years of unjust and discriminatory practices of law enforcement on Black and Brown people in the United States, especially here in the South, what do you think would be the fairest way for government officials to proceed to respect racial justice concerns, especially for local citizens who live near the proposed law enforcement training center?
And I say to you, I think you use the best word, respect.
Yeah.
And from an environmental justice, in this instance, injustice standpoint, it is about respect. I am actually, I'm a political scientist by trade.
Ah,
That's what I earned my PhD in. So I do have a real attraction to politics, and in Black communities and environmental communities, nothing is more political than the environment.
yeah.
And so what you see happening uh, at this site is typical. What makes it
Mm.
kind of unusual is, I would think, is that the responsibility of government is to pursue equity
Yeah.
in communities, and given the racial makeup of the leadership of Atlanta in terms of the mayor and the council,
Yeah.
and the leadership of DeKalb County in terms of the CEO and the commission, you would think that you would get a different outcome
Yeah. Because this is a
for
Black-led
right.
community
You,
and
you would think
city.
there would be more
Right.
identity, more respect, more appreciation for what those communities have gone through,
Yeah.
and for them to seize the opportunity to make things right.
Yeah.
To pursue this from the standpoint of protecting the community, since the commitment was made. It's not that the commitment was not made. Um,
Right. And
it was
respecting their
there.
wishes after being
Yes.
like ignored for so many decades. Like, let's listen to
Right.
what they want and put this
Right.
somewhere else. If it
Right.
has to, if we need a training center, put it somewhere else.
Yeah, there are plenty of opportunities. You may not be able to build this mega facility that you're proposing, but you don't need it. You don't
Yeah.
need that to train Atlanta's police.
Yeah.
You can decentralize it. The point is that if you have a need that most folk aren't denying, police need training,
Right.
but you look at the community and you say, yeah, but this community has been put upon for a long
Yes.
time, and it doesn't have to be this way. So, let's not burden them
Right.
with something like this. Let's decentralize it. Let's make it smaller.
Mm.
Let's accommodate communities, and still achieve the goal that we want to achieve in terms of police training.
And Dr. Echols, we just have a minute left, but for listeners who are interested in sharing their opinion with decision makers who could either stop or move forward with building this law enforcement center in this natural area, how could they contact these decision makers, and what kinds of points are most pertinent to address?
You can always send them an email. They are readily their email addresses are readily available on municipal websites, both in City of Atlanta and DeKalb County. There is a board of uh, the land disturbance permit for this facility has been appealed by a couple of residents that live in the area there, and it is to be heard by the Board of Zoning Appeals in DeKalb County on Wednesday. So you can find that online just via DeKalb County government. Anybody who's interested can still email very easily email the CEO of DeKalb County, the mayor of Atlanta, and the Atlanta City Council. Is easy to find.
Okay, Atlanta City Council, Mayor of Atlanta, and the CEO of DeKalb County are some of the key people who,
yes,
could, like, for me, when I've written them, I'm just saying, like, put this somewhere else if you need it at all. It shouldn't go here. Like, that's
right.
my message, and for a variety of reasons.
And there will likely be other opportunities
For community input.
after Wednesday.
Yeah.
We're hoping that the appeals board will stop this. They should. It violates the law. It violates the Clean Water Act. It violates the Georgia Water Quality Standards Act So just stay tuned. Hopefully they'll do the right thing and then we can breathe easier. But if not, we will continue to fight.
That's right. And I'll put links whenever I find them to different petitions or addresses. I'll put it on the In Tune to Nature Facebook page.
And just, check the website and
Are you thinking you're the southriverga.org?
Right. Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, that's the end of our show, but I wanted to thank you, Dr. Jackie Echols, for being with us on Radio Free Georgia's In Tune to Nature program. Thanks for the environmental justice work you do in protecting our local river and watershed from construction and other industrial activities that undermine the health and well-being of humans and other species who call that area home.
Yeah. Glad to be here. Invite me back anytime.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to In Tune to Nature, broadcasting every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, online at wrfg.org and on Atlanta radio station 89.3 FM. We post action items, news, and podcasts on the show's website, facebook.com/In Tune to Nature. The views and opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of WRFG, its board staff, or volunteers. I'm one of those volunteers. I'm host Carrie Freeman, asking you to please support independent, non-commercial media like Radio Free Georgia. And remember to take care of yourself and others, including other species. Thank you for listening. Cheers.